Hello everybody and welcome to Edshed. Today we are taking a look at a build for the engineer in Guild Wars 2. It's a PvP build and the build name is the Static Protection, and it is a Holosmith build for engineer, as I've already said. So I will start as always by taking a look through the weapons, runes, amulets, the utility skills and the specialization setup. Then we will jump into some gameplay where I will talk through how it should be played, and finally I will give you my thoughts and feedback on how it actually played, how easy it was, how effective it was. So without further ado, let's take a look at the weapons and sigils. So I've got my rifle attached. I've also got the sigil of intelligence and the sigil of energy. With it being engineer, obviously only the one weapon slot. Runes and amulets, we have got the Rune of Leadership and the Demolisher Amulet. Looking over here at the skills that we've got equipped, we've got the turret here, the healing turret, whatever it's called. We've got the Hard Light Arena, we have got the Spectrum Shield, we've got the Launch Wall, and we have got the Prime Light Beam. In the specializations we've got Alchemy, Tools and Holosmith. As you can see here, you can see how I've actually got them set up. There'll be a link in the description below to the MetaBuilds website where you'll be able to take a look and read a bit more about why it's set up this way. If you want to just copy that along with the video, if you decide you like the looks of this and want to play it, it's all on screen now, how I've got it set up, so feel free to pause the video and copy it. Right, I am going to jump into some games and I will be back shortly with my feedback. Okay, so I've been playing this for a little while now and I've really enjoyed it. I think it's a really fun build to be playing. However, it's probably one of the most complicated ones I've played in a little while, but you kind of know that going in when you're playing Holosmith and you've got to keep track of the heat bars. It's a little bit more complicated than some of the other classes. Admittedly, it's still not as bad as trying to manage an elementalist or a mesmer, for instance. They tend to be much worse. So sort of going through some of the bits that I found particularly good with this, I think that the DPS is incredible. You can go in there and you can cause tremendous amounts of damage with the Holosmith, then reverting back and using your elite skill once you pass that 50% threshold of heat, you can cause huge amounts of damage. Like with some of the classes that have very small health pools, you can pretty much one-shot them with your initial opening attack. So that diving in there with the Holosmith skill, so that's your 2 skill to gain in close, your 3 skill does some AoE, and your 5 skill knocks everything down, which gives you some nice crowd control as well. I found that opening of the 2 skill and the 5 skill to be really effective, even when you're diving into quite large pools of enemies. Some of the criticism I have with this particular build is the healing skill. I know a lot of builds use the healing turret, and I think the idea is that you pretty much keep it on cooldown. You're putting it down, picking it up, putting it down, picking it up, because then it's only got a 15-second cooldown. However, I find that really frustrating because I am that player who leaves it to the last minute to heal. So for that reason, I'd probably swap it out if I was going to actually play this more regularly. But I think if you're the sort of player who's happy to keep their skills, such as their healing skill, on cooldown, as opposed to just use them at the very last second, then the turret skill works fine for that. It's really good, and it's got a very short cooldown on it, and you can always boost it a bit with your F1 skill. The utility skills, I think that they were all pretty good. The only one that I didn't get a huge amount of use out of was the Photon Wall. The only thing I found useful with the Photon Wall is the F4 skill, as that granted me some swiftness, which give this class a lot of much needed mobility, as I was finding it it's very sluggish to get around if you don't have any swiftness to give yourself. But the actual Photon Wall itself, I found that once you were getting past the 50% threshold, usually trying to then reposition yourself, because you're probably in the thick of the battle, in order to make use of just a forward-facing shield, is really bad in anything other than 1v1s. And this definitely feels like the sort of build where you want to just dive in there and nuke the entire enemy team and then just let your team come in and mop them all up. The elite skill is, self-explanatory, the prime light beam. You don't want to ever fire this unless you're over that 50% threshold, as the extra pulses and extra damage that you're doing on that 50% threshold really make it an incredibly powerful attack. And if the recipient of that attack has already had a face full of your Holosmith skills, they're going to be in a very bad situation. And because they'll have got knocked down, they'll be in a perpetual state of crowd control where they won't be able to form any sort of counterattack. This is brilliant in 1v1s. It works nicely in group fights as well, as it casts a big long line out in front of you. I was a bit dubious as to how well this would work in PvP, but because it just, snaps to your target and fires, you can have some devastating shots from this where you'll rake the entire team with a really sustained and powerful attack. The F2 and F3 skills, they're okay, but the main reason for taking the hardened light arena and the spectrum shields is to use the hardened light arena and the spectrum shields. The shield's great, it will break stun, which is always useful to have in a build. It'll also then reduce some damage, and if you're over that 50% threshold, you probably will be, because you're going to pop this when you're coming out of your Holosmith state. It'll reduce the recharge time on it, it'll reduce the cooldown on it to just 15 seconds, which makes it really useful, as you'll be able to pop it again pretty shortly, and you're probably at that point going to have attracted a lot of attention, as you'll be doing a huge amount of damage. And then the hardened light arena just generally gives you protection, grants you regeneration. It just helps you out. It's just a nice all-round buff. The one thing that I will sort of say about this build is there is no way of giving yourself stability, and I found that really annoying in certain situations. For instance, I got one guy down into a down state, but I just couldn't finish him off because the other person that was there CC'd me so much I had no option to actually finish that guy off, and as a result I think if I'd have been playing something that had the ability to stabilise themselves or give themselves stability, I think I'd have probably finished him and I'd have put up a much better fight. So that was really frustrating for me, and something that I really missed in this build. I think maybe you could probably play around it if I'd have just kept doing a small amount of damage to him while fighting the other guy. You can probably get around it, but I do like to be able to definitively finish a fight, as opposed to potentially allow somebody to get back up because I just don't have the stability to finish them off. So hopefully you found this useful. There's been some information about how the build plays and whether or not you want to play it. I suppose I haven't really summed up how easy it is. I think it's quite a complicated one to play, but I think it's a very effective one. As far as the damage dealer goes, it's a super effective one. And going back into the outro, which is what I was about to do, I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like and subscribe. Leave a comment if there's anything else you would like to see in these build videos going forward. Maybe if there's a class you'd like, or a particular build you'd like me to look at. I'd love to hear from you, and I hope to see you in the next video.